Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, Patrick Kenny. Follow me on Twitter at Patrick Kenny _. Follow our GSMC Baseball account on Twitter at GSMC _baseball. And in today's episode, I'm going to be going over the top underrated players in baseball. We're going to be forming a team with them. Then we're going to go into a team that can beat the Dodgers. And finally, we're going to go over my strategy when going into a fantasy baseball draft. But first, Major League Baseball has released rule changes for minor league baseball this upcoming season. They're doing some rule changes that could be brought into the bigs eventually, most likely next year if they end up working out. And so, let's just get into it. So the first thing that is going to be different is in AAA, they're going to make the bases larger. So right now, the standard base size for first, second, and third base is 15 inches. And they're changing it now to an 18-inch square. And Major League Baseball wants to do this because it will hopefully limit injuries and collisions that happen at first base, and at first base specifically, and then as well at second and third. Although those collisions are a little bit harder they're definitely harder to avoid, just because those plays tend to be a little bit more, I would say, aggressive with base runners sliding into the base or potentially trying to swim around the defender. And so the second one that we're going to be talking about is in Double-A. They're going to do defensive positioning. So basically, what Major League Baseball is hoping to do in Double-A is remove or limit shift capabilities. Because I think everybody can agree that the shift in Major League Baseball is something that has definitely taken a toll on a lot of fans', I would say, excitement about baseball, just because players aren't hitting the ball often, and a lot of players are pool specialists. So for Chris Davis, for example, the last few seasons we haven't seen anybody on the left side of the infield except for the third baseman playing somewhere in between shortstop and third base. And then you have the shortstop moving into an outfield-esque position in between the second baseman, the first baseman, and the right fielder. Just to try and limit some hits. And while in all actuality, it doesn't take away that many hits, but there have been players to come out and say that the shift took away an abundance of hits, whereas it actually only really took away a few hits. But baseball is such a psychological game that with these players shifting into those positions, the hitter is rattled at the plate already. And while that's a very good strategy to have for defensive positioning, it can go wrong, and we've seen it go wrong with players laying down really nice bunts or something along the opposite baseline. If they're a lefty, that would be the third baseline. Right-hander, you're bounding down the first baseline or something of that nature, and they end up getting usually a single if it's a good bunt, maybe even a double if the ball gets thrown away or something like that. And then the next one that they're going to do is, so the one reason that Major League Baseball wants to do it is because it will help increase batter's average of putting balls in play. Because I think what happens a lot of time is that hitters see that other person just recording just kind of standing in that spot where they've been kind of taught to hit the ball a little bit, and it gets in their head, and then they either pop out or they strike out or something of that nature. So the next rule is in high A ball, they're calling it the step off rule. And pitchers are required to disengage the rubber prior to throwing to any base with the penalty of a balk in the event that the pitcher fails to comply. Major League Baseball implemented a similar rule in the second half of the Atlantic League season in 2019, which resulted in a significant amount of stolen base attempts and improved success rate after the adoption of the rule. Basically, what they are going to do is they're going to make pitchers moves to have to be more they have to be more available and easily seen. So this might help with a lot of players reading quick moves from the pitcher if they're stealing bases. And then in low A ball, they're doing a pickoff limitation, a pitcher timer, and something else called ABS. So pitchers will be able to, or be limited to 2 step-offs or pickoffs per plate appearance, while there is at least 1 base runner on. So if they're in the full windup, they can step off as much as they want, but if there's a runner on, you can only pick off 2 times, or step off as well. So you could... If you don't like the pitch, you have to step off, but you're using an opportunity where a pickoff could occur. And then because of that, the pitcher knows that, or the runner knows, I should say, that the pitcher only is going to have 1 more pickoff attempt left, so they might be a little bit more aggressive on their lead to try and draw that pickoff, so that way they can just get a huge lead and get a massive jump on stealing the next base. So a pitcher may attempt a third pickoff or a step-off attempt in the same plate appearance. However, if the runner safely returns to the occupied base, the result is a balk. So it's not limiting it is limiting the attempts. So you're not going to see, if you're watching high A baseball, you're not going to see a bunch of players, just trying to get picked off 4 or 5 times in a row. It's going to be that 2 times for the pitcher to do it safely, and then after that third time, you're getting a little bit safer. So if that runner gets a big lead and gets picked off and is out, then there is no penalty for the pitcher. But if that runner is able to get back safely, then the runner is then awarded the next base. So depending on the preliminary result of the experimental rule change, Major League Baseball will consider reducing the limitation to a single step-off or pickup attempt per plate appearance with at least one runner on. So that is definitely a very interesting a way to move the game along. And in all honesty, I'm actually in favor of all of these rules changes so far, just because I think that it's going to make baseball sort of like it was when I was growing up back in the early 2000s, and even before then, where players were forced to put the ball in play and there were stolen bases, and It just feels like Major League Baseball has gone away from that just because of how analytics have viewed home runs. But in the next thing is in low A Southeast baseball. So in addition to the pickoff attempts, Major League Baseball will be expanding the testing of the automated ball strike system. So ABS, that's what ABS stands for. Basically, robot umpires are going to be helping home plate umpires call balls and strikes to ensure a consistent strike zone. While I like the idea of this one specifically, I do think that it is going to be hard to truly get behind a new or to get rid of the human element of the umpires, and I do think that it's going to be beneficial in the long run, but at least to me right now, just that thing is just so new that I don't know how well it will work. I mean, obviously, there's not going to be any dispute about calls and strike zones and this and that and the other, but I think that that's one of the more fun parts of baseball is when you see a guy get rung up on a call that's questionable and he has to say a few words to the umpire, and then there's a little scuffle or just shouting match that occurs between the two. And, and then there are managers that are coming out there throwing the trash can out, kicking dirt all over the umpire and stuff like that. I will say that I'll miss that, but with that being said, I also think that it's going to be a good thing for baseball in general, just because there is going to be that there's going to be a lot more walks, I think, just because of that. And I mean, nobody likes Angel Hernandez, and I think that watching him watching him umpire baseball games behind the plate hurts everyone when they watch, just because of how inconsistent he is behind the plate. But so, like, for guys like Angel Hernandez, I think that it would be beneficial to have that guy instead of a human umpire, or to have the ABS instead of a human umpire. But I don't know. I think that it's going to be interesting to say the very least if Major League Baseball ends up using this eventually, and I think they will. But in low A ball West, so they're also obviously going to have the step off and pickoffs following the step off and pickup rule, following a successful pace of game testing among Florida State league teams in 2019. On-field timers, one in the outfield, two behind home plate, and between the dugouts, will be implemented to enforce time limits between delivery of pitches, inning breaks, and pitching changes. The on-the-field timer in low A West ball will include regional or regulations beyond the system currently used in AAA and AA to reduce game length and improve a pace of play. So those are the rule changes for minor league baseball this season, and I think that it is going to just be fantastic. I think that it is going to be so fun watching everybody try and learn these new rules. And while they tried new rules in the bigs last year with the extra inning, like Texas League rules where you have a runner starting on second base, I think that was fun, but I don't think that was anything more than really a gimmick. I think that these changes are actually going to make the game more entertaining to watch. There is obviously the defensive switching rule, or shifting rule, and personally, I don't like that I personally like that rule because I don't like the defensive switching. I find defensive switching to be sort of a defensive cop-out, and I don't enjoy the I don't enjoy the lack of balls put in play. While I was hoping that this would kind of get phased out of the game when players would start to try and go the opposite way and use the entire field instead of just a third of the field, I really think that would have been the best way to just get rid of that altogether. But I think what is more important right now is that getting rid of this change is going to lead to a lot more balls in play. So it's going to lead to a lot more choppers in the hole at shortstop, and it might not be able to get to, or anybody could get to it, but they might not be able to get to it unless you have Aldernon Simmons at shortstop, in which case he'll get at any ball that's hit in that direction. But that rule specifically is probably my favorite rule to look out for, just because I think that the more that the ball gets put in play, and not in a home run sense, and Major League Baseball has changed the baseball to make it less aerodynamic a little bit, so to cut back on the home runs. But I think that this is going to be a very fun season to watch, Major League Baseball specifically, and as well, I think minor league baseball with these rule changes, if they work, I think that it is going to be fantastic as well, just because there is just such a need for a change in Major League Baseball right now. There's nothing that is truly going right, I think, for Major League Baseball. With COVID, everything kind of stopped, and their rule changes weren't great. And I'll admit, I have been fairly hard on Rob Manfred in my own personal life, like just talking with friends and stuff. And he has a very, very tough job, but I don't think that Manfred is in any stretch of the imagination a great commissioner. But I think that these rule changes are a very good opportunity for Major League Baseball to improve in the future. And I like the pickoff rule as well, just because that is also going to improve pace of play. And if you add that on top of the pitch clock and everything, if you combine those two things specifically, with the pickoff rule and the pitch clock, I think that games are just going to be moving a lot faster, because you're going to have to be a fast-moving pitcher while you're on the mound. You're not going to be able to sit there on the mound for 14 seconds just looking at the runner and then looking back at home plate and then just looking just straight at home plate without coming set or doing anything. I am personally really in favor of combining those two rules as well. I think that all of these rule changes are going to be very useful, actually. I think that I don't think that there are many downsides to anything other than maybe the ABS system, just because I think that, I really think that one in particular is difficult to learn and to swallow, just because of how new it is, and because we are so used to having umpires be the fall guy sometimes. And when they make a great call, and much more often than not, they make the correct call. But every once in a while, there are instances like the imperfect game where an umpire clearly gets it wrong. It was a perfect game opportunity for the Detroit Tigers. I can't remember exactly who the pitcher was, but it was between the Tigers and the Indians, And with 2 outs left in the 9th inning, it was a ground ball over to Miguel Cabrera at first base. Pitcher runs over, catches the ball, steps on the bag. Bang, bang play between him and the runner. But the umpire called the runner safe instead of out. And I'm an Indians fan, and I still was upset at that call. I think that it was pretty upsetting. But with changes like challenges that managers are allowed to do now, I think that these changes are good for baseball. And yeah, so up next we are going to be talking about teams that can prevent the team that is called the Dodgers or also a super team from repeating as world champions. I'm gonna give you guys a few teams that are close but are missing out, just a few pieces here or there, and then I'm going to give you guys a few other options as well.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So in this segment, what we're going to be talking about are teams that are likely to stop the Dodgers from repeating. And most of these teams are from the National League. And there are a few teams here and there that are in the American League that can definitely make some noise, but they might not be there yet. And now I'm going off of Bleacher Report's article where they ranked the top 5 teams, and they give some honorable mentions, and we're going to talk about those first. And I don't necessarily agree at all with their number 1 pick. I'm just going to let y'all know that now. But I think that some of these teams, actually all of these teams, are very good and are definitely at least playoff contenders here in the honorable mention category, and they could definitely beat the Dodgers in a 7-game series. But with that being said, the Dodgers are sort of a super team right now, and it's going to be very difficult for teams to really match up well with them in a 7-game series. So the first team in the honorable mention category are the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays obviously got a huge boost from George Springer, but there's still a lot of need to fix their rotation, and they have a really good young core that's going to be very good for a very long time, as long as everybody in Toronto can stay healthy. But I do think that they're not there yet, if you know what I mean. I think that they're a few pitching pieces away, and then also they just need a little bit more time to develop into really, really good big league players, so they have a lot of question marks, but I would expect the Blue Jays to have a terrific season. And the next team is another American League East team. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Rays traded away Blake Snell to the Padres. And the Rays and Cleveland have very good minor league system that develops really good arm talent. So their new arms are going to be very young, and it's going to be unknown. their lineup might not be what it was last season. Last season could have just been a fluke, and it's hard for teams to repeat at being a good hitting to repeat at being a good hitting team. So I think that the Rays have a decent shot at even winning the AL East over the Yankees, but I don't know if they're good enough to beat the Dodgers yet. And so I agree with Bleacher Report in this aspect. So the next team, we're going to move over to the AL Central, and it's going to be the Cleveland baseball team. So they have a ton of arm talent still. They obviously have Shane Bieber and Aaron Savale, and they have a young guy named Tristan McKenzie who is likely going to be a very good pitcher in the bigs. But with the lack of Francisco Lindor and I just don't think that the Tribe offense has enough production at the plate. And they did add Eddie Rosario in the outfield, and the Cleveland outfield for the last few seasons has been just a merry-go-round of different people. And I think that Eddie Rosario is going to give a lot of stability in the outfield for the Cleveland, but I don't know if they're going to have the firepower to compete even with really the Twins. I mean, it's going to be tough, and the next team on the list is the Twins. So the Twins have a ton of offense, but their rotation is definitely the most interesting or most questionable aspect of it. J.A. Happ is going into his 38 year, and Matt Shoemaker hasn't had a healthy season in the last few years. And they did add Michael Pineda, but he is coming off a 60-game suspension for violating the performance-enhancing drug policy. But their offense is definitely capable of keeping up with the Dodgers' offense as well. It's definitely their question is the opposite of the Cleveland Indians' question. The Indians right now just don't have the offensive firepower, but they have the arms. If the Twins don't have the arms, but they have all of the offensive firepower that anybody could hope for. It's definitely going to be super interesting to see what happens between these two teams. I don't know if these two teams. I think these two teams have a very good shot at winning the division. I think honestly, I don't think that the White Sox are going to. I think the White Sox are going to be very competitive, but I don't think that the division is theirs by any means. I think that the Twins are the favorite, and I think that the Indians are going to be the second favorite. As long as the Indians can stay healthy, I think that they have a very good shot at winning the division. I think they'll likely. I don't want to say it's likely, but it's not unlikely for Cleveland to win the AL Central this year. And the next team is the Oakland Athletics out in the AL West. The A's have a very good offensive team. They're much like the Twins in that aspect. And they did lose Marcus Semien, who is going to. They're definitely going to miss his production at the plate, and they lost their closer Liam Hendricks in the offseason as well. But they do have a decent rotation, but it's going to be. They don't have. They don't have Cy Young caliber arms. They have capable arms. They don't have Cy Young caliber arms like the Dodgers do. The Dodgers obviously have 4 of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball right now. So it's going to be really hard for the Athletics to compete with their California neighbors, but it's going. They have a shot at making the playoffs this year, but it's going to be if the Astros just kind of fall off, and that is possible because the Astros this year and the next team on the list is the Astros. The Astros don't have Justin Verlander, and they also Framber Valdez fractured his finger just a couple days ago in spring training. And with those two losses, I don't know how the Dodgers are going, or excuse me, the Astros are going to perform this year. I mean, obviously they still have Zach Greinke, and they just added Jake Cardozi, but their rotation is obviously not nearly as strong without Justin Verlander, and their bullpen's not very deep. And they also lost George Springer. I mean, the Astros still have a really good core with obviously Jose Altuve and Bregman and Correa, but I don't know if, and you can throw Michael Brantley in there as well. I just don't know if they have what it takes because of the loss of Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez. It's just, while I do think the Astros right now are the second best team in the major league, or in the American League, I should say, I don't have a ton of faith in them to beat the Dodgers. The next team is the Washington Nationals. They do have Josh Bell and Kyle Schwarber, and they added them in the offseason, and they are definitely run producers, and they still have their core rotation with Scherzer, Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin. And obviously, if you throw those three guys up against anybody, or up against any other three guys out on the mound, there's no doubt in my mind that the Nationals, or Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin could throw 25 innings combined and give up just a run. But their bullpen is the biggest question. I mean, and obviously age. I mean, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin are all getting up there in age. But I think I agree with Bleacher Report's argument here that their bullpen just isn't deep enough. They did add Brad Hand, and I will say, as an Indians fan, good luck to the Nationals. It's not that he's a bad pitcher by any means by any stretch of the imagination, but it felt like every time I would watch a game where the Indians were leading in the ninth inning, that Brad Hand would be in some kind of trouble, and it would just give you just such anxiety. Then the next team is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals added Arenado, but there just isn't enough really. There's not enough firepower except for Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. They do rank relatively high in the league and runs scored of the last 2 years, but they did lose Dakota Hudson because of Tommy John, and so they just don't have the depth. And Adam Wainwright is still there, but he's also getting up there in age. It's honestly, I'm kind of surprised that Adam Wainwright came back this season. I was expecting him to retire after last year. So the number 5 team that Bleacher Report thinks that will compete best with the Dodgers are the Atlanta Braves. The Braves ranked second in runs scored and first in OPS last year. They re-signed Marcell Ozuna and and that's going to have a bunch of protection for Ronald Acuna Jr. and Freddie Freeman. Acuna is only 23, and he almost had a 40-40 season in 2019. And then in 2020, he had a career-high OPS at 987, and his career is definitely just taking off. And then they also added Charlie Morton, and Charlie Morton is struggled in 2020 with a 4.74 ERA, but the season prior, in a full season, he had a 3.05 ERA. So with Morton added to their bullpen, I think that they do have a really good shot at beating the Dodgers. At number 4, we have the Padres. The Padres obviously have added Hugh Darvish and Blake Snell, and signed Francisco Tatis Jr. to a massive deal. I honestly, this is probably my favorite team to go up against them, just because I love how young they are, and I love how good of an I love how good of a pitching staff that they have. At number 3 is the New York Yankees. The Yankees obviously are amazing offensively. They led the AL in runs scored and OPS in 2020, despite not having Gary Sanchez and Gleyber Torres for most of the season. And they had, I don't believe they played much of any, if at all, last season. And they also had injuries to Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. And while Stanton is probably going to get hurt and miss 60 games again this year, Aaron Judge is most likely going to be healthy for most of the year. And they also have DJ LeMahieu, who they re-signed, and Clint Frazier as well. Brett Gardner is still out there kicking. And they also added Corey Kluber to their lineup. And I think adding Corey Kluber he's going to be such an anchor in that rotation, because he is, I mean, last year he was hurt, and so was Severino for the Yankees as well. But if both of them come back, they're going to be come back healthy. I don't think that there is a way that they can stop. I don't think that there is an American League team that can stop the Yankees outright. At number 2, the Bleacher Report has the Mets. And the Mets, obviously, one of the best teams in baseball this year. It's not even going to be close. They added Francisco Lindor and James McCann, and both guys are going to have a huge defensive impact, but both are amazing hitters as well. And Francisco Lindor, obviously, a lot of stuff's coming out about Francisco Lindor and his time with the Indians, and how he just didn't try. I read a report earlier today that he took a nap during Game 7 of the World Series. And as a Cleveland Indian fan, that angers me so much, because it's Game 7 of the World Series, and you're in a rain delay. Jason Hayward signed a massive contract, did not live up to it at all that season, but he was the reason that he was arguably the reason that the Cubs won the World Series that year. But hopefully, with him being in a new place, he's going to find a new energy toward baseball. And they added, and their rotation also is a lot better this year as well, because they're getting Marcus Stroman back, and they added Carlos Carrasco. And then you also have obviously Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard. Noah Syndergaard is probably not going to be back till June, but he's still going to be very good. And they also added Trevor May and Aaron Loop in the bullpen. They also have Edwin Diaz, and those three guys are very good. And you also have Seth Lugo, who is a very good bullpen pitcher. In my opinion, I think that the Mets, in my opinion, it's between the Mets and the Padres on who is going to match up the best against the Dodgers. But the most surprising team on this list, I will say, is the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox rotation isn't great, and Carlos Rendon, the last 2 seasons, has just been flat out awful. Dylan Cease is going to have to pick up a lot of slack. And they did add Lance Lynn and Dallas Keuchel. So their rotation, I should say, is okay. And they also have Jose Abreu and Eloy Jimenez, who are very good run producers, and Tim Anderson is a five-tool player. He's one of the most exciting players to watch. They also have Adam Eaton, who is obviously one of the best, or not. I wouldn't say one of the best, but he's still a very productive outfielder. And they also have Johan Moncada, who they're hoping to be healthy this year as well. So I understand the upside of this team, but I don't even know if the White Sox are good enough this year to get past the Twins and the Indians. I definitely, it's not out of the question by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I don't have faith in their pitching staff. I don't have faith in their rotation, and while their rotation is going to be decent, I don't know if their bullpen is strong enough to withstand the AL Central this year. And I mean, well, that being said, I think that, in my opinion, I think that the Dodgers' closest competition this year is going to be the Mets and the Padres. And then in the tier below it, I think it's going to be the Yankees. I think it's the Yankees, the Astros, the Nationals, and maybe the Twins, or whoever ends up being the best team out of that AL Central division, because there's a lot of talent there. Now, in the next segment, we're going to be talking about the most underrated players, and Bleacher Report also put together this list as well. And we're going to talk about who is the most underrated at the positions. We also got some honorable mentions there as well. So we'll be right back in just a second.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to this third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. And in this segment, I think this is kind of interesting. We're going to be just talking about some players that are pretty underrated, not necessarily undervalued by their team or anything, but they're just not getting the kind of attention that that other teams that other media outlets are going to not necessarily pay attention to. But these guys are probably going to have a ton of talent, or have a great season this year, and they have a ton of talent. And I'm using a Bleacher Report article right here as well, and then I'll probably throw in a couple of players of my own just to give it more of my take, and players that I think that are still a little underappreciated. And they put together an honorable mention list, and then they also put together a very decent actual team. So the honorable mention list has the catcher as Travis d'Arnaud, and I would tend to agree with this choice just because, I mean, he's got a lot of pop, and he's also a very good defensive catcher as well. And I mean, if your choices are between him or Yadier Molina in fantasy this year, I would tend to go with him just because I think that's a very good option. At first base, they have Christian Walker. Christian Walker is a fantastic first baseman. He plays for the Diamondbacks. I would tend to agree with this choice as well as the honorable mention at first base, just because I mean he's a fantastic player and one of the bright spots for the Diamondbacks. At second in their honorable mention category, they have Cesar Hernandez. I like this choice. I do think that he is kind of undervalued. I don't know. I don't think he's the most underappreciated in the bigs this year. At shortstop, they have Paul DeJong of the St. Louis Cardinals. I like this choice as well. I don't think he gets a lot of attention. And at third base, they have Gio Urshela. And, I mean, that's also a very good choice. He is, this season, he's with the Yankees still. He's very good. I mean, last year in the 151 at-bats that he got, he hit close to he hit just under 300, and then in 2019 in the full season that he got to play with the 400 at bats, he hit over 300. So this guy is obviously a stud with the bat. Then and left they have Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker, a fantastic player as well. He's obviously one of the bright spots for the Reds. The Cincinnati Reds. I mean, and he's not a great great hitter by any stretch of the imagination. In 2019, he only hit 269. His career average is 280. But defensively, he's still very good, and he's still a very solid Major League Baseball player. And in center field, they have Aaron Hicks of the Yankees. I don't know if Aaron Hicks is underrated necessarily. But I think that he can get overshadowed by Stanton and Judge in the outfield as well. So I understand their the reasoning for having Aaron Hicks on their honorable mention list. But I think that is why he's on the honorable mention list and not on the actual on their actual team. And then in right field, they have Cole Calhoun. He is a right fielder for the Diamondbacks, and he was with the Angels in 2019. Last season, he was with the Diamondbacks. And in 2020, he hit 226, and in 2019 with the Angels, he hit 232. He's pretty decent. He drove in a good amount of runs actually, and draws a ton of walks. But he's not going to be one of those guys that is gonna just mash the baseball. And their starting pitchers, they have Kenta Maeda, German Marquez, Kevin Guzman, Marco Gonzalez, and then in the relief pitcher category for their honorable mentions, they have Tyler Clippard and Richard Rodriguez. And I personally do think that Tyler Clippard has been underrated for a while now. I think that he has been underrated because of his or just because he's getting up there in age and just doesn't throw as much and as hard as he used to throw. And he's not as dominant. But I do think that he's still a fantastic pitcher that is going to get a lot of work in the bigs this season, and probably for a couple more seasons after this. And so now we're going to get into their all underrated team. At catcher, they have Christian Vasquez, and Vasquez is still with the Red Sox. And I mean, over the course of the last few years, he's been one of the best catchers in Major League Baseball. He not only offensively, but he's able to control the game very well behind the dish. And in 2019, he kind of made his first real impact, hitting 276, had 23 home runs, a 978 OPS. And then in 2020, it was obviously a shortened season, but he hit 283 and with 7 homers and an 801 OPS. And his OPS plus was a career high at that year with 114. He's 30 years old, so he's not a rookie, but he is gonna start hitting his prime rather quickly. It should be right about now, actually. Last year, he threw out 38% of stolen base runners, and that's not really a catcher stat necessarily. It's more of a pitcher stat, just because, it's hard to throw out a runner if your pitcher isn't doing his best to keep the runner back. And last year, Boston's rotation was just awful, and yet he still managed to get a lot of strikes for his pitchers. He ranked 4th last year in pitch framing, and that was in 2019 where he did that well, and then the last season he ranked 5th in pitch framing. So he's very, very talented behind the dish for sure. And he still is he's behind Raul Muto and Yasmani Grandal in F-WAR since 2019, which is just amazing. Like, he's a top 3 catcher, and he's just not getting the recognition that he deserves. So I agree with this. I do think that he's very underrated. One catcher that I would have put in there is Roberto Perez for the Cleveland Indians. I think that Roberto Perez is very underrated as well. But I understand how good Vasquez has been the last couple of seasons, why he's on this list and Roberto Perez isn't. And then at first base, they have Brandon Belt, and I love this choice. I think that Brandon Belt, and while he is definitely getting up there in age, but he's still got a lot of talent, and I think just in general that he is still one of the best players or first baseman in baseball. But I don't know if I would have gone with Brandon Belt here. He does rank in F-WAR. He is 4th for first baseman and 2nd in weighted runs created plus and OPS with a 1015 OPS. Last season, he's very good. I would have probably put Paul Goldschmidt somewhere on this list, either in the honorable mention category or just somewhere, and maybe even on the all team, just because I don't think that he gets a lot of respect for how good he was. He was an absolute stud for most of his career with the Diamondbacks, and then he goes to St. Louis, and these teams don't get a lot of media attention just because they're not the biggest markets. They're not in LA or out in New York, so they're not going to get as much media attention. But Brandon Belt is a very good hitter as well. He ranks in the 96th percentile in barrel rate and extended slugging, and also had a walk rate last season at 16.8%, which is just fantastic. And he's a really good defender at first as well. In 2020, he ranked in the 68th percentile in outs above average, and he has ranked as high as the 96th percentile back in 2017. And in the last 3 seasons, he's 2nd among first basemen in defensive runs saved. I think he's a very good choice for the first baseman. Now, second, they have listed as Jonathan Schoop, and he's a fantastic player as well. He's with the Tigers still this season, and he doesn't hit the ball hard, but he is definitely a guy who can get the ball out of the ballpark. He's only 29, and he's hit 21 or more home runs every year since 2016, not including last season as well. He would have been on pace to do the same thing last year in 2020, where he hit 278 with 8 home runs. And, of course, the most likely or the biggest reason he didn't hit the 20 home runs was just because it was a shortened season. But defensively, he's a very good guy. He ranks in the top 80th percentile for outs above average in each of the last 4 seasons. And in last season, he was in the top 10% of defensive of outs above average at second base. I mean, even though he does have some pop and he's a very good defender, he's just bouncing around a lot, and he was able to re-sign with the Tigers this last year, but it is just a one-term deal. He plays really good second base, and I think that he could be a very good piece to deal at the trade deadline for the Tigers and get some more prospects. At shortstop, they have Jose Iglesias. He's with the Angels right now. He was with the Reds for a short time, and he is just an amazing defender. But he's also a very good hitter. Over the last 3 years, his batting average has continued to rise. In 2018, it was 269. 2019, it was 288. And then in 2020, he hit 373 with 17 doubles and an OPS of 956. Granted, it was only 39 games that he played in, but he's still very good. He's still a very good player, a very, very, very good defensive player. I think that if the Angels had to replace Algernon Simmons defensively, that this is probably the best guy to do it. I mean, obviously, Javier Baez and Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, those are all very good defenders as well, but I think that defensively speaking, Jose Iglesias is probably the second best defensive shortstop or sole position being shortstop in baseball. And he makes a lot of contact too. He ranks in the 97th percentile for whiff rate and 98th percentile in strikeout rate. So basically what that's saying is he doesn't swing at balls outside the strike zone, and he doesn't swing and miss often. And that doesn't mean that he's going to hit a lot of home runs or anything, but he's a very fun player to watch, absolutely. I mean, and defensively, he had a, quote, slight decline, end quote, in 2020, where he only ranked in the 78th percentile and outs above average, but in 2019, he was in the 95th percentile. I mean, just generally, he's a very, very good player. Iglesias played himself into being a trade asset for the Orioles last season, where he was traded to Los Angeles. And then before that, he was with the Reds. I mean, he's a very good player to watch. And this at third base, they have somebody who is very interesting to me. They have Brian Anderson for the Marlins. And Anderson last year, in 2018, he was fourth in Rookie of the Year voting in the National League. And he plays for the Marlins. He's going to be a very good piece for them. In 2019, he hit 20 home runs and had 33 doubles, and then had 11 home runs over the 59. And he had 11 home runs in 59 games in 2020. He's only 27. He's still got a lot of time left to just be a really good guy. He's also a pretty good defensive player as well. he had a -3 in defensive runs saved during his rookie season, but over the past 2 seasons or so, he's ranked in the 85th percentile and outs above average. So I think that first year was just more of a fluke. In left field, they have Mark Canha for the A's. And, I mean, he has a higher WRC plus than guys like guys like Mike Trout, Christian Yelich, Juan Soto, George Springer, and Cody Bellinger. And that's very elite company. He is 32 years old, though. And I mean, he had a decent 2015 year where he had 16 home runs, but that season ended with a hip injury, and then he only played 57 games in 2017. But over the last few years, he's been able to stay healthy. He hit 17 home runs in 2018, and then in 2019 he hit 26 home runs. And he hit all of those home runs in less than 500 plate appearances for the season. And I mean, he's definitely more of a bat than a glove, but he's still an average, if not above average, corner outfielder, where he ranks relatively decently in the averages there. In center field, they have Ian Happ of the Chicago Cubs, and I remember the first time I ever saw Ian Happ play. It was in 2017. I was in high school still, in my junior year, and during my last period of the day, I was taking dual credit classes, and I didn't have any work to do that day, so I was able to watch the first couple games of the year. And the first actual game I got to watch, I was watching on my phone, and Ian Happ just absolutely drills a home run on the first pitch of the game out of the ballpark to or off of somebody from Miami. I can't remember who, but the first pitch, Ian Happ just takes it deep, and I think that he is very, very good. I mean, in the last few years haven't been great. He's spent a little bit of time in AAA, but in 2019 he did get a few games to play with the team, and then he is only 26 years old. He hit 12 home runs and had an 866 OPS, and then ranked very high in exit velocity back in 2020, so he's still very good, and he can definitely hit the ball very well as well. And hopefully, if you're a Cubs fan, he's going to be able to get that center field spot on his own and have time to grow defensively. And he has the speed to do it. It's just going to take some time to get out there and actually become a really good pitcher, or center fielder, I should say. All right, so we're going to take a short break right here, and then I'm going to give you guys the rest of the list in the next segment, and then afterwards we're going to talk about my strategy to winning your fantasy baseball league.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, and so we're just going to jump right back into this one. In right field is Nicholas Castellanos of the Reds, and Castellanos' name is sort of infamous with Tom Brenneman, Marty Brenneman, his son, and he he said, I'm not laughing at what he said. He said the F word, and then he sort of went on air to an ill-advised apology right before Fox Sports took him off the air. And during his apology, Castellanos hit a home run, and Marty Brenneman decided to call the baseball game. And he was in his very heartfelt apology, and then all of a sudden he just goes, and that's a long drive by Castellanos, and the Reds are going to take the lead 4-3 or something like that. And so his name is now sort of infamous with Tom Brenneman, I think, for probably the rest of his career. He's been a very productive right fielder for the last 4 or 5 seasons or so. He has a 281 batting average, a 333 on base percentage, and a 502 OPS for his career. He has 355 RBIs, which ranks 7th among qualified right fielders, though J.D. Martinez and George Springer are 2 of the names ahead of him. And but J.D. Martinez is primarily a DH, and George Springer is primarily a center fielder, and he's 8th in slugging for that same time frame. And in 2020, he didn't hit well. He only hit .225, and he had an expected .272 batting average. But he still ranked up near the top in exit velocity, average exit velocity, and also ranked up at the top in hard hit ball rate. And I mean, he still managed to hit 14 home runs last year, even though he hit only .225. But if Castellanos can cut down on his punch outs, he just gets struck out quite a bit, and I think a lot of players nowadays just strike out a lot. And he had a career high last season for strikeout rate at 28.5%. But he is still definitely a very good player. And Castellanos is not a great defender, so he's not going to be fantastic out there in right field. But with his bat, if he can get his bat back together and get back to hitting to his average 281 and getting a whole bunch of home runs and RBIs, then I think that he will be a very good player for the Reds this upcoming season. And he is just entering his prime. He is only 29 years old. The starting pitcher that they have listed is Kyle Hendricks, and I would tend to agree with this. Kyle Hendricks is always going to be underrated just because he doesn't have a power fastball and wipeout breaking stuff. He's much more of a Greg Maddux finesse type pitcher. His fastball only averages 87, and I mean, but he's still just an amazing pitcher. He's always keeping hitters guessing because his changeup can go so many different ways. It can move to both sides of the plate. And because of how slow he throws his fastball, his off-speed pitches are going to be that much slower, and then it makes that fastball seem much more deceptive. It's a lot faster when you see a changeup come in at 72 and you see 2 more changeups, and then an 87-mile-an-hour fastball comes in at you or on your hands. It's hard to get your hands around to that. And he gets a lot of soft contact. In 2016 or from 2016 to 2019, he was one of the top pitchers in average exit velocity. So basically, what that means is that when hitters make contact off of him, it's not hard contact. And in 2020, he wasn't as dominant in that, but he was still near the top of all pitchers in that as well. And he produced a lot of soft contact, and because of that, he had last season, and because of that, he had a 288 average and a 1 WHIP, which and he leads the league in walks per 9 innings with less than 1. And he led the National League in strikeout to walk ratio with an 8.0. He's 31, so he is in his prime, and I think if the Cubs, I don't think the Cubs are going to do anything special this year, but they do have Kyle Hendricks to definitely get them a few wins. And as their pitcher, they have Raisel Iglesias for the Angels, and he's coming off a career year and was essentially traded to the Angels because the Reds couldn't pay him. In 2020, he had a 2.74 ERA in the 23 innings that he pitched, and he had 8 saves as well. And the Reds didn't use him the entire season for 4 saves as their closer, but they did use him quite a bit, just as a reliever in different situations. In 2020, he had a very good ERA, like I said, 2.74, and also he only gave up 1.5 home runs per 9 innings in 2018. In 2019, that went down. He is 31, so he's in his prime, and he's really devastating stuff. He has a very hard and lively fastball, a wipeout slider, and a very good changeup. And he had 30-plus saves in both 2018 and 2019. So I think that he is still a very good pitcher, and I would honestly, I would agree with their take that Raisel Iglesias is probably the most underrated relief pitcher. And so now we're going to talk about my strategy for drafting your favorite or your fantasy team, and I've won a few fantasy leagues in baseball, just by my strategy alone, and typically in these leagues, it's the pitchers count for quite a bit of points, and I typically, so for the first, I would say 2 to 3 rounds, I'm trying to get just the best pitchers that I can. I'm trying to get Jacob deGrom and Shane Bieber and Walker Buehler all on that team, and then I start filling in my everyday players. But I think that to start out, so I'm going to kind of run through just like a little bit of a mock draft right now. And so the randomizer that I used is put me at 3rd. And so the players that were already taken were Mookie Betts and Ronald Acuna Jr., and the next suggested players are Fernando Tatis Jr., Juan Soto, Mike Trout, and Jacob deGrom. I'm more inclined to go with either Tatis or deGrom here just because of how good these guys are. And I want to draft deGrom here because I know he's not going to be available the next time that I get a chance to pick. And so now I have a chance, and I'm now in the 2nd round, and the other players that were taken were Juan Soto, Tatis, Mike Trout, Garrett Cole, Shane Bieber, Trey Turner, Jose Ramirez, Christian Yelich, and Trevor Story in the end of that 1st round, and then Walker Buehler, Freddie Freeman, Trevor Bauer, Cody Bellinger, Hugh Darvish, Francisco Lindor, Manny Machado, and Bryce Harper. And then now it's my pick, and I am definitely going to pick a starting pitcher here again. And the top starting pitchers available are Aaron Nola, Max Scherzer, Jack Flaherty, Kershaw, and then Luis Castillo, I actually should say. And while I would have liked to get Shane Bieber, I actually like I am definitely between Aaron Nola and Max Scherzer right here. Nola they're both aces, and Kershaw is there as well. Scherzer is going to get me more strikeouts than Nola and a lower ERA. He's not going to pitch as many innings, and he's not expected to get as many wins as Nola. So I'm going to go with Scherzer right here. And now I'm going to start filling in the rest of my team. And the top players that are left now for this round are Bo Bichette, Anthony Rendon. Those are the suggested players that I pick up. I am inclined to get Bichette. He is projected to have 92 runs scored and 21 stolen bases. But Anthony Rendon is here as well, and Rendon is projected to hit 293 and have a few more home runs in less plate appearances. But I think I want to go with Bichette just because I don't know if there's going to be a better shortstop available in my next round. So I'm picking up Bo Bichette here, and I'm going to skip until my next pick. And so far I have I have a few decent options left. I already have in this mock draft. I have my two starting pitchers because it only lets you have two starting pitchers. And the top player right now that's suggested is Starling Marte, but Tyler Glasnow is still available, and so is Blake Snell. And I think I want to get Blake Snell here instead of Glasnow just because I really like how good the team is. I really like his team with the Padres this season. So I'm gonna pick instead of going and getting Starling Marte, who actually is probably who I might regret later in the season not taking him. But I think that pitchers here are just so valuable that are in these leagues because they only pitch every 5 days. And if you have three guys that are really good pitchers, you can have them pitch multiple times in a week, or you might only have them pitching one time in that week. And so I think that it's more important to go with that and pick up a Blake Snell or a Tyler Glasnow there than somebody else in that situation. Now, I'm going to pick Charlie Blackmon here because I need to start filling in my outfield, and Blackmon is projected to hit 24 home runs, hit just under 300, and have a lot of at-bats. And so now we just got to wait for my next pick. And JD Martinez is still available, so is Aroldis Chapman and Edwin Diaz. I'm definitely picking JD Martinez because he's projected to hit over 30 home runs, have about 100 RBIs, and hit 278. And that's going to be very, very clutch when you can put him at the DH position or the outfield position. I think it's very good to have just that extra guy that those guys that you can put in different positions, even if like it's a corner infielder and you can have him at third base because one guy that you have is a sole first baseman, even though that guy that is a corner infielder typically plays first base. I just think it's very valuable to have guys that can fit in different positions. All right, so far I have Bo Bichette at shortstop, Charlie Blackmon in the outfield, JD Martinez as well in the outfield. So I still need another outfielder, a third baseman, a second baseman, first baseman, and catcher. And then I might pick up a couple relievers or something to see, and we'll see where we are with the times and stuff like that. So I am going to look at the best first baseman that's still available, and that's going to be Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt is projected to get 558 at-bats, have 28 home runs, and 275. But there's also Matt Olson, who is projected to hit 36 home runs, have almost 100 RBIs, but he's not going to have as high of an average. I think I'm more inclined to get Matt Olson just because RBIs are very, very valuable. But Anthony Rizzo is still there, and so is Max Muncy. But I think I'm going to go with Goldschmidt here just because of how... because he has the best potential average out of everybody this season. So next, I'm probably going to check out the third base spot or catcher. Third base that's still available is Max Muncy, but there's also Matt Chapman and Chris Bryant. Max Muncy, though, is kind of valuable because Max Muncy can play first, second, or third, whereas Chris Bryant can play third base or outfield, and Matt Chapman can only play third base. So Matt Chapman is projected to get 33 home runs and have 91 RBIs, which is the highest out of everybody that's available and that's still here. But Max Muncy is is projected to have is just, I think, more valuable because you can put him in different spaces. I can put him at second base if I end up picking up a third baseman or something. So I want to say that I want to go with Matt Chapman here just because he's so limited at third base that I don't know if I want to tie myself down to that. I think I am going to go with Muncy here just because he is more valuable in positional spaces. So far I need a third baseman, another outfielder, and a couple of utility guys. And so I'm going to pick up that catcher right now. And the catchers that are available left are Will Smith for the Dodgers. He's projected to hit 247. There's Travis d'Arnaud, who is projected to hit 266. There's Yasmani Grandal, who also can play first base. He's projected to hit 240, but out of the guys that are left, he's projected to have the most home runs and RBIs. And there's also Wilson Contreras, who is projected to hit 260, and you can put him at DH as well. I think I want to go with either Grandal or Travis d'Arnaud just because those two guys are catchers and first baseman, and they're both projected to have pretty decent seasons. I think I'm going to go with d'Arnaud just because we talked about him earlier today. And now I just need a couple guys to fill in that utility position. So I'm just going to go to the projected all spot, and there's Michael Brantley available, and I think I'm going to pick up Michael Brantley here as my first utility guy. And then I need another utility guy. And just because I think just because of how many outfield positions that you need the three outfielders, and I think that picking up another outfielder here is good. So Tommy Pham's still available, so is Will Myers, but there's also Josh Bell that's available and Eric Hosmer. You also have Gene Segura available out of the second baseman. Shortstops that are still available is Marcus Semien, Didi Gregorius. Out of the third baseman, Chris Bryant's still available. I think I might go with Chris Bryant here because he's still available. Out of the DH category or whatever, or like wherever, if you have a DH in your league, Franmil Reyes, Jorge Soler is still there. So is Josh Bell and Tommy Pham. But I think that seeing that Chris Bryant is still available, I think I'm going to pick up Chris Bryant, and now I'm going to start filling in with my relief pitchers. Now, I probably waited a little bit too long to start getting relief pitchers. It's going to have right now I have Nick Anderson and Trevor Rosenthal as well as Craig Kimbrell available. I'm definitely picking up Chris Anderson. He's projected to get 63 innings, 14 saves, 4 wins, about 91 strikeouts, and a 303 average. So I think Nick Anderson's the best relief pitcher right here. And then finally I'm just going to pick up I still have Rosenthal, Rafael Montero, and Craig Kimbrell, as well as Drew Pomeranz. I think that I want to go with Drew Pomeranz right here, even more than Trevor Rosenthal, even though Trevor Rosenthal is projected to get more saves. But I think that the Padres are going to have a better season, and that's going to lead to more options for Pomeranz to sort of just have a little bit of dominance and shut the door against some of these teams. So I'm picking up him, and we're gonna just real quick. There's still more of I still need to fill in a few more players and stuff like that, but. So my team at catcher, I have Travis d'Arnaud, I have Paul Goldschmidt at first base, Max Muncy at second, Bo Bichette at shortstop, Chris Bryant at third base, Charlie Blackmon, JD Martinez, and Michael Brantley in the outfield. I still need a couple utility guys, but my pitchers that I have Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer as my 2 starters. I have Nick Anderson and Drew Pomeranz as my 2 relievers, and I also picked up Blake Snell just because I really liked getting Blake Snell right there, mostly because it's all you need a bunch of pitching depth. You don't need a bunch of relievers. I think it's more important to get as many good starters as you can than necessarily your second or third utility guy, or even maybe that third outfield spot. I think it would be better to get like a number 2 starter, like a Noah Syndergaard or something, for your instead of a third outfielder type deal. So thank you guys for listening. That's going to do it for us today. But thank you all for listening. Follow us on Twitter at GSMC Baseball. Or _ baseball, and follow me on Twitter at Patrick Kenny _. Thank y'all for listening. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Give us a review on Amazon or on Apple Podcasts. And thank you guys for listening once again. I'm Patrick Kenny, and I will talk with y'all next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.